it is your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. And we're zooming in and focusing in on a very common question that I'm getting in here at the channel, and that is really how to get over the dependency. Not only the financial dependency, the emotional dependency, physical dependency, or really kind of getting over the hump, getting over the wall when you're in a relationship with a covert narcissist or a psychopath. Someone who is taking advantage of you, someone who is not speaking well to you, using force, using intimidation, using bullying tactics, being very forthright and acting like they're the domineering power. And then furthermore, that they get juiced up, they get riled up by having power and control over you. And it's not a it's not a level playing field. It's not fair environment for you. In other words, you can't speak up. You can't communicate. You're always in the wrong. You're always having to approach the relationship with your dukes up. And, you backslide more and more. And how do you really deal with it? How do you really cope? And not only do you, cope, because coping, then you're just really stuck in the same rut. How do you get beyond? And before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently donated to the channel. We have some lovely viewers, a couple gals who have recently made a contribution and donation. Love you so much. Thank you so much for your input and your contribution. It keeps me inspired to know that I'm bringing something of relevancy and use and results for you. And so thank you so much for taking the time to do that. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to be a resource of knowledge and vision for you moving forward. So please, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And yes, any of the viewers, love you all. Thank you so much for your viewership. If I have made an impact in your life, you want to contribute to the channel, there is a PayPal Donate Now tab on the homepage. So please, by all means, it's very much appreciated. And with much gratitude, we'll continue now. And so really that feeling of being stuck, of not knowing how to confront, not knowing how to interface, not knowing how to speak with them, behave with them, get through the muck, get through the constant fighting and beratement. And, they will always position themselves as if they know best. They know better than you. And furthermore, by virtue of their pathology, they will render your critical thinking skills null and void. So in other words, once you've really been set up in the situation and are perhaps living with them, have children with them, work closely with them, your own critical thinking skills are dismantled, disarmed. They're null and void. In other words, it's very difficult for people to learn to connect their thoughts, their cognitions, and get beyond the fragmented thought, the constant feeling of fear and intimidation and feeling of trauma that oftentimes is surrounded or that is created in this environment with a covert narcissist or a psychopath. One, because of just the sheer force of what they say or they don't say. In other words, it's the crippling silence. It's the withdrawal of information. It's the pathological lying where it's like a constant moving target. You don't know where they are. You don't know what they're hiding. You don't know what they're up to. All you know is they're making your life very uncomfortable. You can't get an emotional foothold. It's very difficult to have a conversation because you can't get a word in edgewise. You can't get your emotions acknowledged and validated. I think that's perhaps the most crippling aspect is that, your own emotions, you're not able to communicate with them. They're not able, by virtue of their empathy deficit, they're not able to recognize, relate to, discuss, have, civil conversation with you and acknowledge and validate your needs. In fact, it's probably, amazing that you even have made it this far and you're now researching tools and resources to know what to do. And they will, it is very much like an emotional quicksand where you'll basically continue to be sinking and you'll just sink farther and farther. And it's very exhausting when you are living on these hormones of stress, where basically, you are constantly feeling like you're walking on eggshells. Like when are they, When is, the silence ever going to break? When are things ever going to be able to be accounted for and brought to the light and saying this is not fair? And as you can acknowledge, with a narcissist or a psychopath, the issue is that, they don't ever feel like they have done anything wrong. So they're not going to acknowledge and validate the error of their ways. They're not going to say, you're right, I was too harsh. You're right, we should give this a chance. You're right. You're not going to hear those words. You're not going to feel validated. This is just how they keep that upper hand in domineering and controlling over you. These are people who have an insatiable needing not ever to be satisfied or contented. They have an insatiable need to be in control and have power over others. And oftentimes they will obtain this through lack of information. In other words, they won't confide in you or share pertinent, relevant, important information with you. So they keep a very secretive life. Oftentimes they can, especially in the state of the psychopath, they can have double and triple lives, things you don't know what they're doing when they're out. You don't know what they're up to. You don't know what relationships they're holding. You don't know what work they're engaged in. And then next thing you know, you just get you find out, you look in their phone, you see a pop on their computer, you hear a strange ring on the phone, someone, you find out what's going on, or you're so isolated, you're so shut out by them, from their work functions or family functions that you can barely speak up, you can barely vocalize. And see, this is how they have control, is basically, it's like you're under their thumb, because they have you intimidated. They have you living in a feeling of fear. And fear is disempowering. So fear will always be very crippling, especially if it's chronic. And chronic fear will release the stress hormones, the cortisol, the adrenals, and will have you acting from your limbic brain, and will create a disconnect between kind of your prefrontal cortex, where you're able to think, plan, dream, make decisions, use better judgment. You can't really be simultaneously, in this fear mode and then in your planning mode. So realize that, number one, that you have no need to be intimidated by a manipulator. They will put up a big facade, a big persona. They'll puff up their chest, whatever it is that they'll do to have the assuming upper hand, whether it's their job, whether it's the sole income provider, whether it's their boyish or girlish attitude, where they're very immature, and then they're very chaotic, very confusing. They speak, in puzzling terms. You never know about their accountability. In other words, what's going to happen with us. They're keeping you constantly in the dark. So realize that this is just their number one tool, is that of creating a facade or an environment or culture in the area of your house or your job that, they will have, the final toll on you. They are like the chopping block. They walk around with like an axe in their hand. And they, determine on a moment by moment basis, they keep an air of uncertainty. So that's why they have people basically on their knees, basically rendered helpless, because you want to restore a sense of safety and certainty. And it's their constant, uncertainty and their chaos where they have the upper hand. So life does not have to be like that. Number one, realize that you don't have to be intimidated. You don't have to be dependent. If you're living in a situation with them, realize that that's the facade, that's the illusion that they want you to believe. Even if it's a parent, sure, there's a natural hierarchy there where, they're older than you, or they have, some experiences, or just by virtue of the dynamics of the relationship, they might be your caregiver. But yet it is very important for you to come into a calm body and come to, and work on establishing a sense of peace and safety and inner communication, inner dialogue, i.e. meaning with yourself. In other words, develop your language, because your word is lost. So you need to begin to articulate and develop your inner voice, saying, okay, I am going to move out of this. I am going to keep myself safe. I am going to look ahead. And you need to now begin to make decisions and taking behavioral actions to exit yourself from there. Even if you're married, even if this means divorce, even if this means you starting your life over, that is the solution. So we need to stay focused on the solution. You need to make choices and live in the solution. So if you are not yet employed, you can then, whatever degree you have, even if it's high school, GED, beginning your associate's degree, college degree, you have some interest in some abilities. You need to, begin to connect and say, okay, I need to develop a financial life for myself. I need to begin establishing some credit. I need to, begin earning some paycheck, which is for me. And this is this is what I have to face. It's once you face your fear, and begin making choices and decisions, you'll realize it's not so scary. And so if you have never worked, it's okay. There are entry-level jobs. There are people looking for help. You can work at your, local grocery store. You can, work at your local retailer, gift card store. I mean, there's all sorts of places in your area. If you just, put a hand out and put your feelers out, you'll be able to, begin to get there. If they are stopping you in your life, this is very important that you, not be stifled or stunted. I encourage, my clients all the time, definitely get an appointment with your primary care physician. It's required, at least in the United States, that you have health insurance. We have federal, mandation that we have health insurance. If not, you're going to pay a penalty. And within the provisions of that health insurance is preventative care. So go and schedule a doctor visit with your primary care physician. Hey, I just want to do my annual visit. Go and get a checkup. Speak with a doctor. Get your basic blood work done. Make sure everything hasn't been neglected there, and then let them know that you have a situation at home that you would like help with. They can recommend you to a social worker, a psychologist, and let them know what kind of get a support system in place for yourself. Community support, education, housing. There are all sorts of solutions. You just have to begin to go and walk in that direction. It's very scary to walk in that direction while you're paralyzed by fear. So realizing that to be the case, that fear is what is paralyzing you, realize that it has been implanted in you by this person. It's time for you now to begin to reach out into people who can assist you, and furthermore, come into a state of calm and peace, and I am, and I can, and I will. And, I am, contacting my doctor. I am contacting the local grocery store. I am contacting the local pharmacy. I am contacting my local physician to make an appointment. I am contacting my local community college. Just begin doing this. Get your appointment book and schedule these things in. Once you begin to make a couple phone calls, if you don't have a phone, you need to look at getting a phone. You need to kind of get all these little things into place so you can begin to get out of the dependency state, because I find that there's a lot of people here on the channel who, now are in a state where they're really kind of like at the beck and call of this narcissist, and you need to begin to reach out to family members. If you don't have any family members, then you need to go and schedule an appointment with your local physician. If you don't have, health insurance, then you need to go to a nonprofit clinic. You need to begin to have conversations with people for your medical care, your psychological care, your career education, basic training, getting you up the ladder, because there is support. You have to just begin to get out there and look for it and be it. So, number one, realize that intimidation is the number one emotional manipulation control, and that is not where you're going to be living your best life. You're not able to think when you're in an environment of fear. You need to make an exit strategy. Don't engage the narcissist, because then you're just staying stuck in the trap. If you engage them in the fear, you're going to get stuck in the battle, and you're going to get stuck in the criticism, and you're going to backtrack. You're going to backslide even worse, making traction backwards versus forwards where you need to be. And you need to keep your eye moving forward and keep up your affirmations. Begin to make decisions and choices right now. It is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Thank you so much for your viewership. And yes, please do donate. Love you.